So really excited to introduce and join Dr. Sandra Stratford, and again, Zina Manji on this next session around the really the adoption of digital and some of the regulatory and other reimbursement barriers that we're seeing. There's Zina's back now. And again, both of these incredible professionals are alums of the Digital Health Certificate in Business Excellence program at Columbia Business School Exec Ed. So both officially Columbia Business School alumni. And if anyone's interested in joining that program, please either email me or link in with me, and happy to send you more information about what's coming up this summer and the fall. But first of all, welcome both of you. And just as an opening remark, let's talk a little bit about, again, the title of today's symposium, Digital Health Adoption. And Sandy, let's start with you again, having been Chief Medical Officer at just a few extraordinarily large and impactful global organizations. Talk a little bit about how you see digital health has changed the industry, particularly in the employer side, and what's happened there.
Yeah, so I'll give everybody just a little bit of background to understand where I'm coming from. So I was former Chief Medical Officer of Raytheon. What does that mean? So I'm corporate, occupational, employee health and well-being, environmental health and safety, global public health mitigation, COVID policy, all of that, health center operations. So digital health is definitely something that employers are signing on to. COVID probably pushed that envelope in terms of telehealth significantly, probably, literally overnight. As I left Raytheon about a year ago, but, prior to that, there was some adoption, but we were actually looking at it in terms of including it into our telebehavioral health as well. I always say that one thing I appreciated about the course is really learning more about what digital health involved. As an employer, in my role, they have a CMO. They're constantly being approached by vendors talking about various telehealth and behavioral health and health solutions or in the digital health space. It's difficult to really understand the value of that right away, and the business case. And, I always, and I think one thing take away from this course, Stan, was that, and I think it's something that now I can bring back to, any employer, is understanding what digital health is. I remember you do this excellent slide, everything from telehealth to apps to sensors to AI, gamification, electric health records, all of that. But then understanding what's the business case, the data evidence for it. What's the value? Are we going to see return on investment? I think all of that impacts adoption by an employer. Their relationship with the payer, their relationship with the benefits administrator, all of that impacts that relationship. But I think there's definitely a role. I think digital health can take a lot of the waste out of healthcare and improve services, to our patients.
Oh, that's wonderful. And for those of you who aren't also familiar with Sandy's background, please do look her up on LinkedIn. Just incredibly impressive, not only Chief Medical Officer for folks like Exxon and IBM and Raytheon, but also on the board now of Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, one of the top cancer organizations in the country, really in the world. So, I think when we start thinking about that, we think about transformation happens from the top down a lot of times, but also from the bottom up. And in life sciences, if we look at what's happening in life sciences, Zina, tell us what you've seen with some of the adoption of digital health within pharmaceutical industry. and where you've seen some of the opportunities and some of the barriers.
Yeah, thank you, Stan. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I came into the course. You know, in my role as regulatory affairs, you're trying to drive innovation and really trying to look at the regulatory strategy to bring that across. And what that means is understanding holistically, you know, the marketplace, the how do you choose partners, how do you partner well, and the data aspects that can help that towards where we're going to hopefully at the end at a great destination of a value-based healthcare system. And where I think, you know, in life sciences, the opportunities are broad, and depending on which company you're in, you're going to have, you know, a slightly different focus. But opportunities in you know, drug discovery, choosing which innovations you go forward with, data mining, existing data and looking for targets, but also, you know, in choosing where you might have a digital tool that actually helps the adoption of your drug therapy, or digital therapeutics on its own. I think, you know, it's very wide, very massive. I think the barriers are really trying to understand how you bring that into your ecosystem, right? Because it's a very different play. It's non-traditional life science tools. It's really about the convergence of technologies, which we learned in the course as well. And trying to get that framed into a business case, I think is a key challenge. So from an R&D perspective, you can come out with a lot of use cases and benefits and meaningful data. But how you translate that into a business case where is bringing and showing the value to your stakeholders, that can be a challenge. So you have to think differently. It's not going to be your traditional models. It requires new models, and that takes time, and that adaptation can be slow. But what can help that is also where we talked about where, you know, like Novartis Biome and J Labs are really helping life sciences to work with startups to diffuse these technologies into this integrated ecosystem. And what we learned from Bill Taranto and the Merck Global Fund is also how do you partner well? You have to actually be from life sciences, be very truthful about what you can do well and what you don't do well. And then choosing the right partners to really kind of have that synergistic partnership to drive the data that you need towards a meaningful outcome. So several contributory factors coming in, but trying to frame that up can be a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity.
It really is. It really is. I think it's something to understand a little bit better. And Sandy, you know, Zina talked about stakeholders and how stakeholders are really driving the adoption of digital health within these ecosystems. And one of the ecosystems that we've seen now, like you really opened up about, what are the large employers. And we know when large employers start to adopt new things, whether it was managed care in the 1990s or other elements of these sorts of either healthcare delivery systems or technology bases, Teladoc and, you know, really part of Livongo has risen at an extraordinary speed, almost overnight. Like you said, accelerating the diffusion, the adoption of these technologies almost by 10 years overnight in the last year. Where do you see this going in the future as someone who's led the medical care, really the medical programs for, you know, 3 of the world's top 50 corporations? What do you see as the future of digital within these large employer groups?
Oh, I definitely think it's important in, you know, working with your health plan, your TPA. Those are I think your important players in all this, the influencers, to evaluate that the new technologies and, you know, show that value on investment. I think employers are open to what's going to bring value. So is it solving a problem? Is it does it plug and play with your current providers, your health plans? Is it safe? Is it efficacious? They, they want to know the evidence-based data. They want to know what the other industry and competitors are doing in the field. So I think there's definitely a place for it, especially the telebehavioral health. I see a huge opportunity for that. I see opportunities as we get into supporting employees hired to retire, whether it's aging in place, whether it's your home care monitoring, that all of that, all of that's important, and all of that is something I think employers are going to want to look at.
Wonderful.
But somebody asked me, is cost an issue? I said, yes, it is, because if you're a new vendor and I've been working with a vendor and they're charging $1.50, let's say, per employee per month for the service, and you're coming in at 10 times that, it's probably going, it could be the best idea ever, but then between the consultant, between the health plan who might be offering their own solution, the employer themselves, they're going to look at their healthcare claims and say, well, what do I really need? And, so I could come to them and say, that's fabulous, that's innovative, but you have to understand who's going to benefit, who thinks they may, I guess, be, I won't say harmed, but in terms of whether it's the health plan, the TPA, but then who are all the influencers? What are all the relationships between the health plan, your third-party administrator, your consultant, all those relationships, and then ultimately who's going to make the decision?
Perfect. Yeah, that's extraordinary. And I think, we are, and for those of you in the audience who aren't from the employer side, again, I've done a lot of grants and research with large employers. TPA means third-party administrator. We've got a vernacular alert for folks out there, and that is a group that pays the claims and does the medical management for large self-insured employers that are utilizing health plans for their networks and maybe some of their care management, but not for third-party administration to do that separately with a different group. So anyway, Zina, we're seeing the future of digital health progress rapidly, certainly at the pharmaceutical company, the manufacturer you work with, and talk a little bit about that. You finished the digital health certificate in business excellence at Columbia Business School, and we certainly don't want you to do any kind of advertising here, but you did talk to me when you finished, and you talked about having and being brought into meetings you hadn't been brought into before because of your new certification and excellence and around digital health. Talk a little bit about the Columbia program and what that's done for you.
Yeah, I think, first of all, in the program, it includes, academics, the staff at Columbia University Business School, but also industry leaders. And I think that combination is just massive, right? Because you really get the front lines of what you need to do, and actually real-time learnings on what's actually happening. So I was part of the COVID cohort. So we were seeing real time on, okay, what's happening? How are we using digital tools to solve problems, especially in New York at that time? And so I think the networking that you get, the access to industry, that then leads to, hey, should we collaborate here? Do we want to look at joining a discussion? But just exchanging ideas and potentials, I think is certainly something that's come out of this.
That's wonderful. And thank you both for joining today. Really appreciate it. It's wonderful having alumna on the program who have finished up at Columbia and now officially part of the Columbia business community for the rest of your lives. Thank you both for joining us today.